Go ahead and press record. All right, so welcome to what's today? Monday's weekly call with our one-on-one VIP clients, all of you. So if you're watching the replay, I'm so glad you're here. I hope you had a great weekend. I know it might be still the weekend for some of us with the holiday today. So I'm gonna first go over the check-ins just to see if there's any questions on there. Okay, so I don't have any questions. Perfect. And then I do just want to make a plug if you haven't done your weekly check-in to get those done, because those are really helpful for you and for me, of course. But yeah, so tonight we're going to talk about macronutrients, of course, and the main component of what we do on this journey. And I love food. I love learning about food. And so I'm really excited to talk about this. And yeah, we'll get right into it. I think the thing that excites me so much about it is when we understand a little bit more than maybe the basic things that we see, floating around or being marketed towards us. It just is easier to, I guess, be more in touch with your body and just have that intuitive knowing of how to be successful, how to take care of yourself, how to foster well-being in your life through diet. So the first macronutrient that we're gonna talk about is protein. So I picked this one because they're all important, right? They're all important, but I personally, and I find most people have the hardest time hitting their protein goal, or at least when they're not tracking or before they started, a program with me, they were definitely under eating on protein. So what I do is I try to build my meals around it. Otherwise, if I'm not building my main meals around it, you might notice that you run into a situation where you're eating a lot more protein at the end of the day to try to hit that macro, and it's not fun to have to eat a lot of protein. So I try to avoid that. But yeah, so a little bit about protein. I also wanted to start with it because it's the most thermogenic macronutrient. So what that means is it's least likely to be stored as fat. In fact, it doesn't really get stored as fat unless you're eating absurd amounts, which none of us are really going to ever run into that problem. So yeah, it's the most thermogenic, meaning it's used for energy and for our muscles specifically pretty much right away. So it's important too because you've probably heard it helps build muscles. So it helps provide the amino acids to build those muscles that are necessary to build the muscles. So our body we have a need of 20 essential amino acids, and 8 of those our body can't produce on its own. So we have to get it from food. You can get the 8 essential amino acids from mostly from animal products, like lean meats and things like that. You'll also see a lot of people in the fitness community or just on a health and fitness journey supplementing with amino acids, specifically with those 8 essential amino acids, just in case, they're not getting it from their food. I'm a big fan of taking amino acids. I don't think I'm taking it right now, but instead of a pre-workout, because that makes me feel super jittery, but a lot of the amino acids, even the caffeine-free ones, they give you a lot of energy, and it makes the workout feel really great. So that's just a side note about a way to supplement with those. So protein also, we know carbs can be stored as fat, right? A lot of us have heard that. Protein can also be stored as glucose, or energy to be used later, but that's usually only if we eat more than our bodies can process. So about 60% of it does change to glucose or energy. So from all of the macronutrients you'll learn, we get energy from all of them. But its main job is building muscle and it also helps with satiating our hunger. So that leads me into the next point. It takes 3 to 4 hours for protein to affect blood sugar levels. Whereas you'll learn here when we talk about carbs, carbs are a much quicker source of energy, which is why people, and I know, Elena, you can relate to this, why athletes will like carb load, because it's going to give them that quick energy for a competition or for training. Also, another thing about protein is it contains other starting materials in the production of other compounds needed by the body. We won't get into that, but just know it's good for your body in other aspects of what as well. We already talked about amino acids. Let's see. So just a side note about the essential amino acids, like I said, those only come from animal sources, which is why when you see or hear about someone on a vegan or vegetarian diet, they're lacking in that protein. However, by eating a variety of plant sources, if someone's eating enough of a variety, you can still get those essential amino acids. So kind of backtracking, it's not only from animal sources, it's just a little bit easier to get them from animal sources because you'd have to eat like a really wide variety of veggies. Okay, so going into carbs, they provide the same amount of energy as protein. So I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but when you're logging your food, there's 4 calories per gram in carbs and same for protein. So 4 calories per gram for both of those macronutrients. So carbs out of the 3 main macronutrients contain the most amount of glucose, and 100%, whereas protein was only 60, but 100% is converted to glucose or energy. So carbs are really important for us for energy. Of course, there's the keto diet out there and it's just manipulating the macronutrients. But if we're eating a balanced amount of carbs, protein, and fat, you don't need to do, most people can't do keto. And so you don't need to do it to, still get all the benefits of burning fat and using carbs for energy. And we've all heard like what's not used gets stored as fat. So before that, though, our bodies are actually able to store leftover energy in our liver and some in our muscles from carbs. And then when it hits that threshold of that storage, then it's stored as fat. So we've all heard about healthy carbs or not so healthy carbs. And so the reason, I'll give you some food examples, even though I'm sure a lot of us know, but the reason they're classified as healthy and not as healthy carbs is because of their glycemic level. So there's low glycemic, which is going to be better. And then there's high glycemic. And so when we say high or low glycemic, that's just referring to the effect it has on our blood sugar. So the higher glycemic level is the higher, just means we'll have higher blood sugar levels. And so the thing about high blood sugar levels is that energy doesn't last very long. And blood sugar levels are also important because it affects things like such as appetite, mood, and energy. So if you've ever noticed, like when you're eating sugar and you get that sugar high and like you have a lot of energy and then you crash, that's why it just doesn't last very long. So, and it also doesn't keep us very full for very long. If you notice, like if you weren't eating enough protein, and you were like only eating carbs for a couple of days, or say you were on vacation or something, you're like always tired and hungry. So some food examples of this is anytime, I always say like the closer to nature that you eat, it's pretty guaranteed it's going to be lower glycemic. Not always, like when fruits are carbs, right? And so fruits have sugar. So there are low glycemic fruits, which you all got on your food guide. Those are going to be things like berries and green apples, and then, but things like mango and pineapple and dates. Dates are the highest glycemic fruit probably. So those, and it's not like a bad thing if you're eating those and you're just like sitting around, but you'll just notice that they have more carbs per volume. So they're like very nutrient dense. And so you'll have to eat more of them to get the same thing as maybe if you were just eating like a baked potato. So if you ever want to play around with this, you can start by thinking about pairing more the higher glycemic carbs maybe after a workout, because your body's going to use that up since you just burned a lot of, you just used a lot of energy, and your fuel tank is your glycogen storage levels in your liver is like completely empty. So that's something that you can do. But if you're hitting your macros, you'll just intuitively learn like what fits, and maybe you'll eat a food where you realize, okay, that's not like super macro friendly. That kind of like didn't give me a lot of wiggle room with fat for the rest of the day, or it took up a lot of calories, but it didn't give me any protein. So you'll just kind of learn that as you go. And then the last macronutrients is fat. So fat differs from protein and carbs because it has 9 calories. So over twice the amount as per gram as protein and carbs. So all this means is there's more calories in a lesser amount of food, right? It's more nutrient dense. Doesn't mean it's bad. In fact, getting enough fat, usually between like 45 is the lowest end that I would ever put anyone on, and then 80 is probably the highest. So between that range is really important. And of course that depends on, your height and your body and just where you're at and what your goals are. But that's really important because fat is also used as energy. And the cool thing about fat is it actually, when you pair it with carbs, it actually slows the rise of the blood sugar that carbs have an effect on us. So that's interesting. Fat is also very satiating. It's really satisfying. So I usually like to start my day with a little bit of fat, and not always, but this is just like if you want to play around with it, because it's kind of setting my day up to like already, if you're someone who you're in a calorie deficit, you're not doing a reverse diet, and you're like working on maybe not eating as much. And so to like keep yourself satisfied, pairing fat first, like with breakfast, is going to be really helpful. Again, because you might be having carbs with breakfast, which I think everyone should be for the most part, even if it's fruit, because we need that energy. But it'll help that glucose level. So, or the effect that carbs have on our blood sugar. So let's see. So fat, only 10% of fat is converted to glucose. So again, that's why it's satiating and makes us full. If you've ever eaten a lot of fat in one day or one sitting, like you can feel it, right? Or you'll get to that point. Whereas just to go back to compare, 100% of carbs are converted to glucose. And it depends what kind of carbs in terms of how quickly that happens. And then protein, 60% of it is converted to glucose or energy. Let's see. And then the last couple of notes I have on fat is just to limit your fat from animal product. So our body doesn't process animal fat all that well. In fact, it like chills out, for a lack of a better term, in our bloodstream. So it takes a really long time for our body to process that out. So it doesn't mean like any fat from meat is bad, but I notice personally, if I eat like a ribeye steak with like butter and I don't know, have like a really fatty dessert like cheesecake, I don't really feel that great. And so that's why. Whereas if I'm adding like an avocado to my smoothie and I'm cooking with coconut oil, it feels more clean. And my, my stomach doesn't hurt. It's because we're able to process and digest those fats better. So let's see. Another important thing about fat and why we need it is that it supplies fatty acids that the body needs but can't make, such as omega-3, which is why you'll see some people supplement with that. And then it also assists with the absorption of fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, and carotenoids. I haven't said that word out loud. I'll explain what that is though. So we get a lot of our vitamins from our food, and or if you're like supplementing and taking them, a lot of times they're not easily absorbed if you're not eating some fat in your diet. So some people will like eat a little bit of fat when they take their vitamins. If you haven't ever gotten your blood work done and you ever find yourself with some free time to like ask your doctor for a full blood panel and get all your levels tested, that it's really interesting. And I think it's something that everyone should do like every once in a while, maybe every few years, if you're like relatively healthy. So, and I say that because then you can know what to supplement, because a lot of times we're taking a multivitamin and we don't necessarily need all of that, and our body's not even absorbing it. So for me, when I did this, I mean, I lived in Portland, so my vitamin D levels were super low. So I've just supplemented with at least vitamin D3 ever since then. And the carotenoids, I feel like I'm not saying that right, but let's look up how to pronounce it. So those are carotenoids. Okay. So the carotenoids, those are going to be what you see in really pigmented foods. So like carrots and sweet potatoes, and in some plants like kale and some of those veggies, bright yellow, red, orange colors, and also in fruits. So I'm just looking up the benefits real quick. I know a lot of it helps with like eyesight. And there's a lot of vitamins in it. So mostly vitamin A is what it's converted to, which is essential for growth, immune system function, and eye health, like I said. So that is pretty much an overview of macronutrients and how they work together and the calories per gram and things like that. Does anybody have any questions?